It's the Pikey and Loughz Show, Talking Taipans. Chris Pike and Alex Loughton come to you with everything that is 100% Taipans. Let's go. It's Talkin Taipans.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show. We're here talking Taipans. I'm Chris Pike, your co-host, and I'm really excited for this week's show, Loughz. And I reckon we're talking about the most exciting team in the NBL right now, the way the Taipans are playing. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into the way they've been playing over the last 3 games since we did our last show. Before we get stuck into that, let me introduce you, my co-host, Alex Loughton. Thanks for joining me.
G'day, Pikey. No, we got it out there, but it was unbelievable game and sort of plenty to chat about. A little bit curious though, because in your post pre this podcast, you're saying about how the Taipans will charge into the playoffs, and I think we've got to unpack that comment a little bit today. So yeah, keen to get this one started.
This episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show proudly brought to you by Cairns Total Physio. Less pain, more life.
Well, let's get straight into it. I mentioned that on social media, interested to get a reaction, and now interested to get your thoughts, because like I just said, I think this Taipans team is the most exciting team in the NBL right now, the way they're playing. You have a look at their points, and over the last 5 games, they've scored more than 90 points in every game, including 106 in a loss to the Hawks, obviously, which went to overtime. But it's the style of play that they're playing. You've got a point guard who can mix up the tempo. Scotty Machado can slow things down. He can push the pace when he wants to. I reckon Cam Oliver's probably the most exciting player in the league, just overall, and he loves putting on a show. He loves finding the camera. He loves revving up the fans. You've got Kawat Noi, who is an absolute showman, and then you've got Majuk Deng, who loves to play things up. You got Jared Kenny and the mullet to add something different. I reckon this Taipans team is exciting, but it's also one that's now playing basketball that deserves to have them considered a genuine playoff contender. And if you have a look at the teams they're fighting with, the Perth Wildcats are now slipped back there 8-5, and Cairns have beaten them twice. So, they've already almost got that season split wrapped up against them. The Southeast Melbourne Phoenix are only 1 win ahead of them. Now that they've beaten Melbourne United twice, they're suddenly not far ahead, and they're right around the same mark as Adelaide and Brisbane. So I see no reason why they can't consider themselves playoff threats right now.
Well, there's two things. One, I agree with the fact that they're really on the rise, and they've got some really exciting players. Sitting on 5 wins, only really one team is ahead of them outside of the top 4. But there's just one little thing that irks me, and just in the back of my head. All I think about is those 3 losses to Hawks and how much that could potentially come back to bite them. And did they close the deal on the bottom tee? Well, no, they didn't. So that's probably the only glitch in the armour that is, the Taipan squad that's really forming a solid campaign. So, I mean, the win against Melbourne is huge. They had, they had to go to their press defence to try and just invoke some kind of, turnovers and things like that. But the Taipans probably could have been more attacking against that pressure, but they certainly got the job done against Melbourne United again. So, I mean, they're getting big wins against teams at the top of the table, but they've also got that 0-3 against the cellar dwellers. So 2 games away from the halfway point, Pikey. A very gettable home game against New Zealand Breakers, and then 2 days later, a tough trip to Sydney. This would probably be one of the predictions where I have to split the weekend for the boys, only because it's tough to play a back-to-back game, let alone go into Kudos Arena and really perform at the top of their game. Not impossible, but I think my head's telling me a split on this weekend would be acceptable. Tough to go 2-0, but not impossible. If they go 2-0, then I'm saying that, yes, a big push for top 4 finish. If they split the weekend, I think they're on track for a logjam later on the season for that fourth, fifth kind of placing. So if they don't get the job done on Friday night and then don't get the job done in Sydney, it really becomes quite a tough stretch leading into the second half of the season.
Well, let me pick your brain a little bit more about what you just said, because it's fascinating the way the season's unfolding so far for the Taipans, where against the grand finalists from last year, the Wildcats and Melbourne United, they're 4-0 and they've looked fantastic. But then if you have a look at against the Breakers and the Hawks, who you would think are the two teams that are out of the playoff race just about already, and they're 0-4 against them. How do you explain the differences in those performances?
You know what? It's funny because, I saw the guys after the game, and I'm not quoting them or anything here, but, you start to get a real good sense of how the team is and how they sort of mix and gel together off the court. And they're great blokes. I mean, they get along really well. But what I kind of see, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if you've seen this as well, Pikey, but they've really risen up to the challenge of the big games. Yep. When they feel like they've got a point to prove. But then there's kind of a bit of a lackadaisical kind of approach to the start of some of these perhaps not so important kind of games, or not so challenging games where it's not the championship team from last year or something like that. There's just a little bit of they lose a bit of an edge going up against an opponent where they're not as high up on the ladder. So this game, I think, would prove to me that they've recognised that, for one. Don't take this game lightly. We just come off a massive win, and we're playing the bottom team or second bottom team in New Zealand Breakers. Let's learn from our mistakes from the game after that massive win in Perth. Lost the next game after that. So let's learn from that kind of thing and just be switched on. We just got to be switched on from the get-go. Otherwise, a team will put on like 7 or 8 offensive rebounds in the first quarter, and all of a sudden there's a big hole. Can they figure it out and actually go, this is our biggest problem right now? We win a game, then we kind of lose the game. We win a game, then we sort of, let our guard down for a split second. So it's a little bit of maturity, I think, maybe, in really going, look, this league is tough. Like, recognizing that if you let your guard down, teams will punish you in this league. And I think that's their biggest hurdle right now, is mentally switching on and understanding the urgency to really get a good start and continue that rolling for 40 minutes.
No, I think you make a great point, because if we go back a little bit over a week ago, they'd had the 2 Saturday night games in a row at home, a really solid win against the Bullets where they never really looked challenged. That was a terrific win. And then they backed it up with another terrific performance on the back of that 18-0 run to beat the Wildcats in the fourth quarter. But then I feel like 2 days later, like you said, there was a real letdown heading to Illawarra, where they perhaps thought that they just had to turn up and continue playing the way that they had in the fourth quarter 2 days earlier, and they would come away with a win, and they started really slowly that night. They ended up probably should have won the game, given I think it was Scotty Machado hit those couple of threes just before the game went into overtime. But what leads to a drop-off like that when you put together 2 really good wins and then you head to Wollongong to play the bottom team? What sort of leads to a letdown like that, and how do you avoid that happening this Friday night against the Breakers?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint, and I'm sure Mike's sitting there thinking the same thing. Like, how do I get these guys to switch on and understand the enormity of what we need to do here? It's not just going to be a walk in the park, just going into Illawarra to and start well. But I think individually, a lot of the players are new to the league. Obviously, Cam Oliver, Scotty Machado. These guys aren't used to potentially the distance of travel. They're not used to the league and how teams respond and how well it's scouted. We play each other 4 times in this league, pretty much, except now we've got 9 teams. Obviously, there's some teams you only play 3 times, but it's heavily scouted. Like with a low number of teams, you just, that's all you can do is scout the opposition. So everyone's going to have these little tweaks in how the game plan is. So that each team's learning a lot. If you just play 28 teams, you play each other once every 3 or 4 weeks, then you're just playing a pickup game, basically, kind of thing, with a bit of structure. But here in this league, the difference is, every detail is under a microscope, and you play each other so close to the last time you played each other. The coaches have to adjust. So, I mean, that aside, or if you don't have an understanding of that, then you kind of could be caught just sort of having a bit of a lapse and thinking, I'm just going to get into this game nice and easy, and then hang on a minute, we're in a hole here. Like a couple of players have got going, haven't done your defensive assignment, haven't remembered to box out. Those are the kind of that's the mental lapses that can really kill you.
A lot of those things have been an ongoing problem. The rebounding has been a problem all season, but against Melbourne United, it was the opposite. The Taipans were terrific on the boards. They out-rebounded Melbourne by 12, and that's a team that's got Sean Long, who's been leading the league in rebounds all season. 17 offensive boards, I think they finished with. That's something that hasn't been a strength of this team, but if suddenly they can start rebounding the ball a lot better, and between Cam Oliver and Courtney, they had 26 of them just on their own, 7 offensive rebounds between them. How much of a difference can that make if they can rebound better on a consistent basis?
Well, that's the point I made to Mike, is that was the most noticeable difference that I've seen from the first Melbourne game versus this one. In the first Melbourne game in Cairns, Sean Long just had a field day in the first quarter. He just got all the offensive boards. And this time around, everyone to a man boxed out their guy, and Cam Oliver was able to really put a body on Sean Long and came up with the goods. Interestingly, I think Cam's obviously a 4-man. He's not used to playing against NBA talent 5 men for a start. So most of the time in his matchups against the 4, it's just a jumping contest, which he's gonna smash that every day of the week. But when you come up against NBA talent and you're playing at the 5 position, I think it's been a bit of an adjustment for him as well. Just to switch on and go, I've actually got to do my work early and body up and put myself in a better position than to just go, there's the ball, I'm going to go for a jumping contest. And then 7-foot Sean Long's just, got the length on him. So I think he's had to really realise the, being maybe out of position or giving up a bit of height at the 5 position when he plays at the 5, that he's really got to do the grunt work early. I think Courtney has shown games where his high energy or really aggressive attacking the board has really set up the rest of the game for him. If he tries to start a game shooting hot and getting into the game by shooting, it's not so much his style. I feel like his style is energy plus. Get going, get contributing that way first, and then some threes might open up. But if you open up a game with 3 rocket launchers and don't quite connect on them, and then all of a sudden your team's in a hole, and you're probably going to be facing a subs pretty soon, coming off the bench to try and find some answers offensively. But each guy's both those guys are pretty young as well. Quat's 21, Cam Oliver's 23. Still learning and learning at a really quick rate. If I am honest about this league, they've come in and had to shoulder a big load for the Taipans, so they've really performed well. But I think there's a steep learning curve for the guys.
The other thing about Cam is that, unlike a lot of the other big guys in the league, and Sean Long's one of them, and I think just about all of the big guy imports that every team seems to have signed this year, they seem to be getting in foul trouble, but Cam seems to be on top of that at the moment. Has he learned a bit quicker than the other guys, or is he just a bit smarter? Is he, what's he doing right that he's not getting into the foul trouble that the other bigs across the league are?
I think his post D is good. Like he uses his strength well. He'll contest late, and because he's athletic, he'll put a lot of players off who think they got an open shot. He'll kind of do that late sort of lunge and contest. Like it's a bit like Nate. Like Nate's arm length is so long that he can get to and change a lot of shots late. So I think he's a help side defender. His role, Cam Oliver's role, has really been protecting the rim, and that the one play that sticks out, obviously Melo drew the contact, got a bit of separation and was still trying to finish the layup, and Cam Oliver read it beautifully and just volleyball spiked it into the baseline
and stared down
Melo. I thought that was he's just got a really good sense of the occasion defensively, so he's sort of roving around a bit and getting ready to help the guards as they're defending their opponents coming into the key. So I really like the way Cam sort of reads the game. And yes, it's been poised and efficient on the defensive end. So yeah, it hasn't really come across much foul trouble at all.
I like the way he finds the camera pretty quickly after he makes a big play too. And it didn't quite work when he tried it in Perth, because the Wildcats went up the other end and got a dunk when he thought they'd called a timeout. But it worked pretty well on in the game against Melbourne when he found the camera after he made some big plays.
Always got respect for someone that knows where the lens is, Pikey. You've always got to know where the lenses are in the stadium and how many cameras there are and which camera to look at. So he's certainly got that down pat. Maybe he's flexed in the mirror quite a few times and kind of liked what he sees, but he's definitely quick to locate the crucial camera.
What did you make of Melbourne United? You've seen them twice now up close in person. Were you surprised that they? I mean, to me, they didn't look like a team that was on a 6-game winning streak, and Cairns outplayed them for most of the 40 minutes. What did you make of them?
Look, Barlow got into foul trouble early there, so he's kind of the solid brains behind a lot of their lineups that have been successful. Obviously, Pledger out. They had a bit of a mixed bag after that of sort of combinations. So I think they missed a lot of shots that they probably have made, which would have put a lot more pressure on the Taipans. So once that wasn't working, they obviously went to the pressure defense up the floor. So they were searching for answers, and they just weren't able to just get any sort of momentum. I think, Melo did sort of lose possession a couple of times late, like crucial possessions late in the game. So, he felt a bit of pressure later on. But I think, Scotty Machado was just able to control sort of tempo from the other end. And, he was just kept the team more poised. And I think they got good looks. Once Melbourne had to go to that press attack, I'd like to see more of the attacking offense from the Taipans when the pressure comes up, because they were a little bit conservative for my liking in how they handled that press. They kind of got the ball over halfway, then held it, and then just almost waited for the defense to come back and get set. I reckon that's the chance where you're going 3-on-2, 2-on-1. And, this team would love to run and get on the rim like Cam Oliver did on that alley-oop from Kuatnoi. That was pretty crazy. So he caught the one-hand cock back on the right, elevated off the 2 feet, caught it on the right hand outside of the line of the backboard and threw it down, and then flexed, as you mentioned, into the camera. But yeah, I want to see more of that, especially when the defense is on the back foot and trying to pressure. They broke the first line of defense, and then it's like I said, 3-on-2 or 2-on-1 to finish the play.
You talked to DJ Newbill about his big dunk over Sobey on our last show. He had another big one on Friday night as well. That was another big finish, and probably posterised one of his teammates, unfortunately.
Yeah, look, I think Deng thought is holding back Mello. Newbill simply elevated and was sort of pushed. Deng was pushed in the back and ended up under the legs of Newbill, who swears that it was a dunk. He got fingers to the rim. I thought he got the ball above the rim and forced it in a downward direction, making contact with the rim. So I think it's a poster on Deng, Pikey. I don't think there's any two ways about it. If we could just get a clearer picture, love to see the print on that.
Well, before we talk about if he can dunk it or not, are you still able to dunk? When's the last time you dunked in a game? You're still playing, of course. You're still playing at the Marlins, and even right now, you're still playing. Is it in the A grade competition?
My last dunk was in 19. It's been a while since a lousy throwdown on the 10-foot rims. The 9-foot ones have been all right, but the 10-foot rims elude at the old Loughz.
Can you still do it on fresh leg?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Probably a off 2-foot leaner with the right hand, really reaching to get that emphatic throwdown. But it wasn't my specialty, Pikey. I think the athleticism kind of escaped me but I did get a wet 3-ball, so I was kind of keeping that thing sharp. So it's been some time.
Wanted to get your thoughts as well on the point guard matchup. Obviously, a lot of interest in Cairns every time Melo Trimble comes back to play, but to me, I thought Scotty Machado clearly outplayed him. Scotty had 17 points and 10 assists. It's not all about numbers, but even the numbers suggest that he clearly outplayed him when Trimble had 16 points and 4 assists. How did you see their matchup?
Well, let me put one of those assists into context here. He threw a left-handed, almost a no-look pass down the lane to Nate, who had out the go-go gadget arms to collect the pass with one hand and put it in then with the left. Scotty Machado then looks at his left hand in amazement, oh man, this is the gift of God here. But Nate collected that thing from a mile away from his body. I'm surprised, he made Scotty Machado look good on that catch. So I just want Scotty Machado to know that he's got some pretty good bigs who've got good hands that can actually reel in some passes. So he's got a bit of luxury there. He's got Cam Oliver upstairs. He's got Nate with the long arms that can one of the best hands in the league. So he's got some real good guys around him. But man, Scotty Machado is obviously a dream teammate, finding guys in positions where they can be successful. So he's just an absolute dream to have on any team, or a dream teammate, or a dream point guard if you're the coach. You can there's so many things you can do. But also the poise in pressure, when the other teams, the chips are down, they ramp up the pressure. He's strong enough. If he gets past his opponent, off a middle on ball or something, he keeps them on his back by cutting off their way back in front of him. He's just got all the tricks of the trade, and he just takes his time, and that's what I love. And that's a mature 28-year-old that's been around a lot of different leagues, NBA included, and really, really good to watch. If you're a point guard that loves the game, this is a guy that you really want to base a lot of your decisions on, because he really is a pleasure to watch.
Now, you promised us that you would attempt to direct a chant towards Melo Trimble if the mood struck, if he was at the foul line, and if the building was a little bit quiet. How did you go?
Yeah, it was a fail, Pikey. The stadium was too big. I underestimated the bloody size of the thing. It's a 5,200 seat stadium. Easier with a microphone in hand, but can you think I can find one in that stadium? No. So not in the second row, but maybe somewhere on the floor there. But no, it was all good. It was probably more appropriate in the first game if they just got an extra free throw. It was kind of more hot in the media that time, but it's still fun to get up there and have a bit of a laugh. There was a few that were with me. Who's with me? Had about 10 over there, 20 over there. We tried the boring chant, but no, it was all good, all a bit of fun.
Did you upset some people too?
Sorry?
Did you upset some people as well?
Oh, I think the new players to the Taipans thought I was having a go at the team, so they were pretty upset. But luckily, I had Jared Kenny's partner to settle them down. Say, don't worry, it's just lousy. He's having a go at Melo Trimble. So I was thankful for Alba for doing that. Otherwise, I would have had dark stares, laser beams in the back of my head for the rest of the game.
Now, the other thing was, I don't know if you've been able to catch the replay, but old Trigger's getting some big time interviews at halftime. He had you the game before. I think it was the Brisbane game, wasn't it, or the Wildcats game? Then this week he had Jody Maguire. What do you reckon he's got? What do you reckon he's got in store this Friday night?
Oh, who has he got in store for this Friday night? It could be former Perth Wildcat manager Brett Habercroft, who's involved with the Taipans this year, putting on the meals and sorting out all the manager duties, but just looking after the boys. He could be a contender, I think. Pikey, what do you think?
Well, he's one of the best in the business. I was surprised that. I'm not sure what ended up happening with him leaving the Wildcats, but it was one of the biggest signings in the off-season for the Taipans. He's a terrific pickup, and I'm sure the boys are appreciating everything that he's doing for them, because Well, I
don't know if they are, Pikey, because the new guys wouldn't know anything different. The old guys would, and I said, make sure you tell the new guys what was before, because this time around, like this year, they actually, they're getting really well looked after with food. There's a players' room. There's, multiple actual ice baths, so not a freezer container. So, the boys are getting looked after, and so they should. And, I hope they can really respect what Brett Habercroft is able to provide for them now in being a full-time role as a manager, which we haven't had before.
One last thing, and then we'll move on to some of the other talking points in the league, and then we'll do a preview of this weekend's games, and then we'll let everybody move on with their lives. The coaching staff, I think Mike Kelly and his team deserve an enormous amount of credit for the squad that they have put together. We spent the first couple of episodes here on the Pikey and Loughz Show dissecting the squad, but now that we're almost at the midway point of the season, I think we're in a good position to sort of reflect on how well it's put together. And I think the biggest change from last season was that I think the three imports that you played alongside last season were all all too similar. You had 3 guards, so the backcourt was loaded with the imports and had probably lessened the talent that you had to work with in the other 3 positions in a lot of ways. And I think that probably ended up hurting the team and probably was a factor in the way you ended up not winning too many games, unfortunately. But to now have a genuine point guard with Scotty, you got DJ Newbill, who is a terrific shooting guard. He's one of the best shooting guards in the league because of the fact that he can score, but he does it so efficiently. And then Cam Oliver's a fantastic big man. And then you've got Majuk Deng and Nate Jawai as the other big man who couldn't be more different to back up Cam as well. You bring in Kawhi Noyes, your small forward, and he's been a revelation. And then you've got some handy role players like Mirko Jeric and Jared Kenny and Fabian Krislovic, who's playing important roles too. The team doesn't go that deep, but everybody has their role in the team, and it looks like it's a really well-balanced squad. That's what I've made of the first 9 rounds.
Yeah, look, it's hard to get the combination right for any squad to get the balance right, to get people filling the right sort of gaps in the lineup that and have players that complement each other. The trio of imports is right, and I think you've touched on probably a crucial point, having a bit of diversity there, covering different positions from point guard, shooting guard to big man, athletic big man. We haven't had someone like Cam Oliver with the basketball IQ and NBA level for, and would have loved to have a player like that on a squad with an established core. So Taipans still roll through about 7 deep for decent minutes. I still stand by my preference of the bench contributing about 25 points to really balance out the workload, I guess. On the weekend, they had 11 points off the bench. The weekend before, when Fab had 8 points and the bench had 25 points, or collectively, I think that was a big game from my point of view. And Fab was the standout because his plus minus was like 21, and his point contribution was 8 points. So that was like a perfect blueprint of a game, how I would want to see it. Turnovers 13 or less, 25 points off the bench, team win, everyone's happy, everyone's kind of chipping in. This game was a little bit more from the starters to get the job done. Only 11 points off the bench, Pikey. 15 turnovers, probably a couple too many for my liking, but I think in terms of this team able to really bust out some huge wins, it's really impressive to see what they've been able to achieve. Can they continue grow? Can they continue to bond and gel? Only time will sort of tell how that is able to translate into wins. I'd love to see how these 2 games leading up to halfway pan out, so that they can sort of they don't have a whole lot of time to exhale before the next game, but it certainly is a good point to just take stock and see where things need to be adjusted. But certainly credit to Mike Kelly for what they've been able to do these last couple of weeks.
This episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show proudly brought to you by Cairns Total Physio. Less pain, more life.
Let me get your thoughts on a couple of things quickly happening in other spots around the league. Starting with the Sydney Kings, they're unstoppable right now. They're 11-1. They look clearly to be a cut above the rest of the competition. We'll get a good look at them obviously this Sunday when the Taipans head to Sydney. What did you think of the news when they added in Xavier Cooks to a team that's already jam-packed? This is a guy who is a fringe NBA player. He was part of the World Cup squad for the Boomers before he got injured. What did you make of them adding somebody of that high quality to a team that's already jam-packed?
Well, let's talk about Will Weaver for a second. This guy is fearless. He's come from obviously NBA level. Also head coaching the G League team up there. He's at Brooklyn, I believe. But this is a guy that's been involved with the Boomers. He's been involved with Brett Brown before. He's been involved with a lot of Australian players. And he's kind of come into this league without anyone really knowing anything about him. But he's actually been right here in Australia under our noses for quite a few years. So let's just look at what he's able to do for a second now. So he's come out he's on a multi-year deal here, and I know him quite well actually. There's a connection there with Philadelphia 76ers lead scout. Danny Mills is a good friend of mine, and he knows him quite well. And Will even stayed with Danny's mum and dad who live in Cairns. He stayed up here in Cairns, and we hung out for a bit. So, he's familiar with a few of the locals around here. But this is a guy that's put together a squad. He's obviously let go of Kwani, which is a big move to release a player in your first year. out here, he's really handling it sort of very business-like. I think, other coaches might be like, well, I don't want to, my first year, I just want to kind of get the lay of the land. He's sort of making big moves. He's been ejected. He's showed passion. He's showed, resilience. He's showed, composure. He's sort of showed the full arsenal of quality coach that's doing the right thing. So I guess I trust his judgment in that he's brought in the best players possible. He's just playing within the rules, I guess, moving pieces around on the chessboard, just going to bring in the best player possible on probably a never-ending budget that'll allow him to do so, which is a luxury for any new coach to a new league kind of thing. So he's certainly making some big moves. He's not afraid to move players around, even though that does have ramifications for the individual, but he knows it's a business. He's coming from NBA level. He's obviously got the respect of Andrew Bogut, otherwise he wouldn't be out here. So there's a lot of, I think he's a big-time player, big-time personality, a big-time person to be in that role, and he's never played much basketball in his life except for maybe at the YMCA. So, he doesn't need to have been a player. He's got a good brain on him, I feel, and I think he's, they're poised for a successful season.
I wanted to get your thoughts. You touched on it there already, but just on the fact that Kawani had to be let go for him. Obviously, you spent time with him at the Taipans. I feel like if he had stayed at Cairns right now, he'd be a very handy player. He could be sharing that small forward spot with Courtney, and that'd be very, very handy. How much does this hurt him? And if you're him, how do you sort of try to bounce back from that to keep your career alive beyond this season?
Well, I mean, I think you'd be looking at the your minutes and going, okay, I'm really not getting much of a look in here. This is, he was signed quite early in the off season to complete the roster. So I think the Taipans were still needing time to put together the squad. So he obviously was happy to sign that early stage of the off season to complete that Sydney roster, and maybe just taking a chance. Who wouldn't? But I think obviously as the seasons wore on, he's sort of realised he's not going to get a whole lot of minutes. So it's always unfortunate when a player is sort of let go, and I think he'll find his a way back on his feet. He's such a positive guy and really nice guy, like really nice teammate. He'll just do anything for you. Like he's just always too nice. But I think he'll find his way. He'll probably reload again in the Seabull, and he's got NBL experience. Like you said, he started to have a few really good games last year as well, and able to string some games together. So he had quite a couple double-digit games, but he's certainly a lot of energy, a bit undersized in terms of, you're quite noise at the three, has a bit more height than Quiney at the three. So yeah, he's gonna keep battling, he's keep gonna find his ways, gonna keep trusting that he's got what it takes and make improvements. So I think he'll be okay. He'll land on his feet, but it's just a bit of a setback right now, and it's a bit unfortunate for his position. But I think he'll bounce back.
The other big talking point across the league and probably across the world right now is the way LaMelo Ball is playing. We saw him against Cairns, unfortunately, step up huge, and he hit that three to put the game into overtime. Ended up becoming the youngest ever player in NBL history to record a triple-double, and then he backed it up with another triple-double in the next game over in New Zealand. We've seen some mock NBA drafts come out recently, and he's the number one pick. It looks like he's now becoming firmer and firmer in becoming the number one draft pick. What do you make of what he's doing right now at the Hawks, and what do you think his future holds for the rest of this season?
Well, look, I felt that win against the Cairns Taipans back when he had the 24-point game. I was like, nah, he's gone home for Christmas and not coming back. Like, his stocks couldn't really go any higher at that point, and I was probably couldn't be more wrong. He backed it up with a triple-double against the Taipans, and then another triple-double, the game after. So now he's projected number one. I couldn't emphasize this anymore. I still believe that he'll be home for Christmas and not needing to come back. Why would you? I mean, basically, the only thing your stock can do is go down. It's worth millions of dollars to stay healthy. If you get injured, bad things happen after that. So why would you want to risk that? The team's not going to go to the playoffs. So why would you stay? I think, his people that look after him, it'll be it's basically a board. Like, it's a business. He's the business. He'll have a whole board of directors deciding his fate, and it will be out of his hands, obviously. They'll be like, look, this is the best course of action. The board would include his dad, the agents, everyone that's invested in him, and it just makes sense that you shut up shop and wrap yourself up and wait for June 22nd, staying healthy and just keeping in shape. So, look, I don't think he'll be around for much longer.
What does that mean for the Hawks? Assuming he does leave, they still haven't been able to find a replacement for Aaron Brooks. I think they were very keen on Xavier Cooks, but they missed out on signing him, obviously, to go there to play under his dad, Eric, who's an assistant coach, would have been an ideal fit. What does it mean for the Hawks if they still can't bring in that next import to replace Brooks, and if they lose LaMelo for perhaps, the last 10 games of the season?
Well, it basically becomes a junior development program to save money to load up on someone for next year if they've got finals hopes for next season. So, you probably batten down the hatches and save as much money as you can, and just give your younger guys some quality time. And obviously Sunday Detch is having a great sort of season, and Greeter's not having a great season. But they won't be trying to get these players up to scratch and NBL ready and a possible selection for the year after. But at this stage of the game, there's not really a whole lot you can do. Why would you waste more money when you don't have a whole lot to start with? You may as well be saving up for future seasons.
All right, let's refocus on the Taipans, because this is a huge round 10 to try to consolidate now. They've won 3 of the last 4 games, but suddenly a couple of losses this week, and as you touched on at the start of the show, would be potentially fatal. Go 1-1, and you probably are still treading water there. If you can get both of these wins, you probably end the round in the top 4. So it's a massive weekend for the Taipans. It starts Friday night back at home, Cairns Convention Centre, against the New Zealand Breakers, who are really struggling. They're 3-8. They just managed to get back on the winners list, beating the Hawks last week, but they're still down on manpower. I don't think Corey Webster will be coming to town. Potentially Rob Lowe will be back though, which is good news for them after his nasty fracture to his skull. What are you expecting on Friday night?
Yeah, look, I think, the Breakers will be buoyed by their win against the Hawks, but I don't think it'll be enough. The other side of it is RJ Hampton had that breakout game against the Taipans, so he'll be confident. But I don't think, the way the Taipans are playing, I don't think they'll let them come in quite so easily. I feel like the Taipans will get this done by 10 points or more, probably 10 or 12 points. If they make it if they don't have the start of being switched on and ready to go, and they let this game be a one possession game, then that would be disappointing. I think the Taipans have to put New Zealand to the sword earlier on by asserting who they want to be this season. I think this is the perfect opportunity for them to prove to the league that they can back up a big win against a team that's sort of lower down on the ladder. So this is a big opportunity for the Taipans, and I think they have to prove it to themselves and everyone and the fans that they're contenders, and they'll certainly want to get New Zealand by a lot, and then head into Sydney with a free swing.
It's then a massive test on Sunday in Sydney, but suddenly the travel problem's not as much an issue, because Sydney will be coming back from playing in Perth on Friday night. So both teams will be, both will have played on Friday night, and both had to have flown back to Sydney on Saturday. So that evens it out a little bit. But I mean, the Kings are in amazing form right now. They're 11-1, and they look outstanding. But if you go back to the first game of the season, the Taipans played them really well, and for probably 32 at least of those minutes, they were on top in that game. The Kings only got on top in the last little period. So that they played well against them once this season. What do they need to do well on Sunday to make a contest of it and at least be close late in the game and then try to pinch it?
Well, I thought that first home game for a start, they got a little bit unlucky with a couple of calls that just sort of swayed to Bogut's way. So I think this game might have a little bit more of an even call on it from that side of things. I think it's an interesting point. They come back from Perth. I'd say Taipans have the lesser travel to do. Coach Will Weaver's been resting Bogut, and it's been commented on a few different posts and podcasts that, he's managing his minutes, or Bogut's getting old older, so he's getting more tired and things like that. So as a reference, it was gone down from 12 points a game down to 8 points a game. Everyone's like, oh, he's performing worse. Well, he's just getting less minutes. Well, or is he being managed better with the minutes that he only needs to play as much minutes as he needs to through the course of the season? Then you've got a fresh Bogut for the late charge in the year. But I think I think Bogut would find it hard to back up. He's 7'1". He'll have to play a big game in Perth, who are angry at their performance at being pantsed at home again by Adelaide. Adelaide. So Perth are going to come out firing. So they're going to need Bogut for a good 20 minutes of that game, if not more. So he's going to have to play 25, travel back. I don't know. Maybe he gets rested a little more, and they take their chances with saying to the other players, look, if you guys are worth your salt, you're going to have to carry the load this game. We're going to rest Bogut and maybe only play him for 12 minutes, or when we need to, or as much as he can, as soon as he can get warm and limber up. So it could be an interesting one. I'd be very keen to see how that Perth-Sydney game plays out. Maybe it's a tight one. Maybe it's overtime. They're exhausted. Like, things can change pretty quick. The Taipans obviously will be focusing on the game right in front of them. Got to get the job done Friday night, and then just sort of sit and go, hang on a minute, we've got a sniff here. Let's go for it. We've got nothing to lose, and let's try and get back to 500.
Well, very quickly, let's touch on your predictions for the other games this round as well, starting with that Perth-Sydney game in Perth on Friday night, which comes straight after the Taipans host the Breakers.
I think Sydney will get this one by 5, but I think Perth are going to be sort of clawing and gnashing at the teeth, trying to find some semblance of form. But yeah, I think Sydney will get the job done.
Melbourne United and Adelaide 36 is on Saturday. Fascinating game. Melbourne have now lost 2 in a row last weekend. Adelaide have won their last couple, including winning in Perth. Intriguing one, this one.
I think it is a tough one, because I didn't see Adelaide winning that Perth game, but they certainly showed some fine form. Melbourne obviously had a tough double with Taipans and then Sydney last week, so they might be licking their wounds, but they might have a bit of aggression at home. Is that Melbourne, one in Melbourne? Is that what you said? Yeah, okay. I think that one could be going to overtime, but I'm going to say Melbourne United by 6 in overtime. And
also on Saturday, Brisbane Bullets host the Illawarra Hawks. It's a must-win game for Brisbane. They continue to struggle a little bit, but they can't afford to drop this one.
Look, this one could be interesting if this is LaMelo Ball's swan song as he heads into some turkey and some stuffing. Will I go for a Hawks win over the Brisbane Bullets? I think Brisbane Bullets will have to claw to keep their season alive. So it's going to be a close one. I'm going to go Brisbane Bullets
Just
by
quickly,
3.
when does it get too late for the Bullets to make a personnel change, which I think a lot of us think that they have to do, given the unbalanced roster that they appear to have put together?
The time to make a change was probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. So, what's the point of doing it now? Well, maybe it's to sort of scrounge together some semblance of respect, going into the late part of the season. But, if it wasn't for scraping into the playoffs last season, Lemanis might have had a slightly different, job in front of him. Like I feel like there was a lot of pressure on him to make the playoffs last year, and then he just got in, and didn't have a great series. But I think he's going to have to do something. He's going to have to show that he's willing to, if you stand your ground and bomb out and then get close to wooden spoon, it's going to be curtains and they'll probably have to make a change. Like I think they'll have to do everything they can and try everything they can to get the best possible players.
It's going to be fascinating. Then on Sunday, Southeast Melbourne, who finally hit the road and finally got a win in Brisbane last weekend, they host the Wildcats, who will be coming off that tough game in Perth against the Kings. So a fresh Southeast Melbourne might be too strong here.
I think Phoenix will get the job done by 8 points against Perth.
Yeah, and I think Ty Wesley should be back as well for that one too. So
Right.
We touched on Sydney and Cairns, obviously. So the round then ends on Monday night. The Breakers hosting the Bullets. That one's tough to pick as well, because even though the Breakers are struggling, they're still very tough to beat when they're on their home floor.
Yeah, I think New Zealand will be good on their home floor as well. And I think New Zealand get the job done against the Bullets. We'll go by 7.
Well, we'll see how we go, Loughz. But this has been a big show, big edition of the Pikey and Loughz Show. There's been plenty to dissect, plenty to talk about. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed hearing your opinions and your thoughts on breaking down everything to do with the Taipans and across the league. We'll watch on in anticipation with what happens this weekend. But before we go, Loughz, what can you leave all of our listeners with?
This episode of the Pikey and Loughz Show proudly brought to you by Cairns Total Physio. Less pain, more life.
Well, mate, 2 games to the halfway point. This is when the scorecards come in. The school report cards will come in after these 2 games. Can the Taipans get to 500? It's going to be a tough one with the games they play on this road on this weekend, but I think they can certainly split the weekend and lick their wounds and get ready for an epic second half of the season.